So living in America as a black person, going outside of the house, well, shoot, even in your own house, it's not really safe. Is there any place that you feel fully safe at? Like you didn't have to have your guard up, you didn't have to try harder to, three times harder to meet the next person.
I think because almost in a sense it sounds kind of bad, but like we experience things on an everyday basis, no matter if we leave the home or if we don't leave the home, because even if we're in the home, we're seeing racism on television, we're seeing it on social media, we're seeing it on the internet all the time. So like, I think it's kind of messed up because I'm so programmed now to like internalize the situation, be super upset about it, but then also know that like, okay, well, this is just everyday life for me. So I, in general, am always like thinking about it, and I'm always like not on edge, but I'm always like when I go to my car and drive, I pray that I'm going to go to the place and make it safe. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or like, if I go to an event, I pray that I'm not going to have to deal with, certain situation. Like even at work, like when I worked at a film production company, I took a break. I worked like 2 miles less than where I live right now in Hollywood. And I would take a break on my lunch break. And I remember 2 incidents like in the same week of white people, a white woman thinking we're walking, and she's super far away from me. She sees me, and then she tries, as a bunch of cars are going in the street, to then stop and get across the street so that she doesn't have to have any contact with me. But where she stopped to try to cross the street was at my car, which I was going to. So then she ends up just looking stupid because I'm like, oh, now you're here. Like, I just caught you. And then I remember another instance where I'm walking, talking to my dad. I'm wearing a sweater. If anything, I look super, approachable. I'm wearing a sweater. And somebody gets out his car of a BMW, looks back to see where I'm at, honks his horn to lock it like 3 times super loud as if I was going to steal his car. And stuff like that like should bother me doesn't. Like I look at it and I laugh and I'm like, that's kind of funny that this man is like programmed to think like that. And I'll be like, oh, he's messed up for it, but like that's everyday life. I know that like in general, my life is like in danger consistently.
Like I grew up around some black people, but not really. Like it wasn't until college that I was really around black people. And not to say like I have friends of all types of ethnicities, but I feel like with black people, I don't have to have my guard up. So I feel safe when I'm at least around a black person. My old roommate, he was of Latin descent, and I would tell him like, oh, I went to the store today. And I'm just like, cheer, like, hey, guy, like, this is great. Like, Latin people, they would see me and they would, like, clutch their bag and like, look at me like I'm terrified. And I was just like, why do I have to make myself, like you said, approachable? Like, I would tell him this, and he was just like, oh, yeah, well, they do that to me, too, because he was from a different country. Like, a lot of people out here are from Mexico, and he's from a different country. And he would say, yeah, they look at me like that too. And I'm like, no, it's a different look. Yeah.
I think me being as a black woman, I'm not looked at as a threat, but I get the notion that people look down on me, like see me naturally as inadequate. I mean, I have people like double check what I do all the time consistently, like have someone always like watching over me everywhere I work, like
micromanage.
Yeah, and I'm very observant. I look at other people, but it's not reciprocated to the next. So I wouldn't say that I'm like people like go around and like shrivel up, but they just like push me around. That's what it is for me.
Can I add something to your point? Because it's super tough being like a black woman in America. And I think it's funny because I one time had a white woman tell me that I suffer from male privilege because she was having difficulties at work. That doesn't work for me. I'm black. That's never going to work for me. I don't suffer from male privilege. And I remember I asked her, I was like, how many black women do you work with? She was like, none. And I was like, okay, so off chance you could have a black man in there. Like, how many black men do you have in there? None. So I'm like, so you're talking to me about what you're struggling with at work. And I'm like, that's your issue. That's your fight. Like, that's not my fight. That's not y'all's fight. Like, you guys got to work way harder to maybe get an interview. And then when you're at the job, you have to then work 10 times harder. There really is, like, I just noticed this, and I know I'm going off on a little tangent, but like a lot of progressive white people is that they've somehow, in a sense, kind of recreated history to thinking that they're better off because they're not so overtly racist. And it's like, no, you're just as bad because you're not even recognizing your own privilege and your own even history into it. Like, you're not recognizing any part that you had in anything. It wasn't just white men owning slaves. It was white women owning slaves. It's white women pushing for all these false rape cases, which I'm sure each and every one of us know somebody who's been affected by that. It's just this big like energy where they like are supporting us, but they're still not listening to us at all.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like super difficult to deal with.
That's
and I can only imagine it's way harder being a black woman. So
yeah,
it's really a no-win situation because you look at all the stuff that's been happening, which also has been started by white people. If, you know, you look at the video and the footage and all that other stuff, which is a whole nother conversation. I was in Baltimore when Freddie Gray died and they had the riots or whatever in Baltimore. I was in there. I was in the city. So like when you're there and you're seeing a lot of the stuff and you're experiencing and you're living it, like that is literally built up frustration. But it's a no-win situation for white people because at the end of the day, you peacefully kneel like Kaepernick, you're upset. Riot happens, you're upset. You say to, you know, protest a different way, but in their heads, they're really thinking that there's like a difference when it's like at the end of the day, you're just unhappy. You just don't like black people. That's it.
yeah.
Like you're just racist. That's it. Like it has nothing to do with anything that I don't have to change how I walk. If I want to drag my jeans all the way down to my damn ankles and walk away and walk, I can do that. If I want to tighten them up and look all professional, I could do that too. But you need to have that same energy for both. And they've convinced themselves in their head that like the black people they accept are the ones that they deem and see as not a threat and acceptable.